Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Gaming Mix podcast, your official podcast from Analog Stick Gaming. I, of course, am Jordan, one of the co owners, and to my right, as always, is the founder himself, Jeff. How are you doing, Jeff?
Not too bad. It's kind of finally stopped raining, so that's been really good because the weather has been pretty bad.
Yeah.
But yeah,
At least you haven't been melting like me last week.
yeah,
That was
I'll
uh,
take
that was
that.
awful. But yes, it's been a big week in the gaming world. There's been some news, and most of it not very good. So we have quite, we don't have many stories today, but the ones we do have are bigger. So this may be a shorter episode than usual, but if you're here with us on episode 94, please think about smashing that like, subscribe if you haven't already, and we should probably get into it. But before that, as always, Jeff, we need to have a little word from our good friends over at NordVPN.
Alrighty, let's get this going. It's probably the same sale, and it is. Get 75% off plus 3 months extra to your NordVPN subscription. The best and fastest VPN on the market, a stable and encrypted internet connection, and your all in one digital security app. Start browsing the world's internet today.
Fantastic, fantastic. We do have Vitcher still coming. I actually need Jeff to fill out a form for that, so we'll get that sorted very soon. But yes, Vitcher glasses. You'll also be able to get something from them through us very soon. Some sort of discount should you want some AR glasses basically to carry around to have a massive screen on your face at any point. You can go and check out Jeff's review of the Beast Vitcher glasses right now. And I also had them, and let's just say we both like them very, very much. so, so
Oh, they're amazing.
it's we definitely recommend them, and that's not just because they're going to be giving us an affiliate link. That's a genuine recommendation. So now, Jeff, let's get into the gaming news because it's not been a great week, especially if you're a fan of physical media.
Alrighty. Yeah, we'll start off here once these ads decide to go away. Oh, there's another one. It popped up everywhere. All right. So Sony has announced that physical games will be discontinued for the PlayStation consoles from January 2028. Following this date, new games from all publishers will be available on the PlayStation Store and at retailers in digital formats only, it said. The transition to digital won't affect games that have already been released or will be released prior to January 2028. Sony said a consumer preference as consumer preferences and the broader entertainment industry continues to shift away from physical discs to digital. Physical game disc production for all new games releasing on PlayStation consoles will be discontinued starting January 2028. It added, this is a natural direction for Sony Interactive Entertainment to adapt to consumer trends as the general preference for digital media significantly outpaces physical discs. This transition will enable us to align more closely with how most of our community prefers to access and play games today. We'll continue to prioritize our resources to drive innovation in how players can access games and provide choices as to where players prefer to purchase new games, whether that is at retailers or the PlayStation Store. We remain committed to delivering a world class gaming experience for our fans, and we thank you for your continued support. Like most platforms, PlayStation game sales have been increasingly shifting to digital in recent years. In its latest business years, Sony Interactive reported that 78% of full game sales were from digital downloads. Now, this story plays into another story here, and that is that Sony has announced that it will be closing the PlayStation stores on PS3 and Vita. After nearly 2 decades of supporting the PS3 console generation, we want to let you know that we will be closing the PlayStation Store on PS3 as well as on PlayStation Vita. PlayStation Store on PS3 will close in select markets starting this year, followed by global closures for the rest of the PS3 worldwide and PS3 Vita next year. This means new content purchases will no longer be possible once the PlayStation Store closes on those devices. To ease the transitions, players will still be able to download previously purchased content after the closing date for the foreseeable future. So these stories kind of play into one another because the PlayStation 4 store is still going to be active. For how much longer? 15 years? I think you're muted. Um,
I am, yes. Sorry about that.
well, like, all right. So Xbox had done a similar thing last
Hmm.
whatever, but that was just for Xbox, like just for their first party titles. It had nothing to do with third party titles. Those guys could still, um, get the discs manufactured and so on and so forth. But this is going to be for all PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, and we would assume PlayStation 6 games, is that's going to be digital only. Now, Sony, unlike Microsoft, does not allow discs to be generated from a third party, um, uh, I guess, method or origin. Whereas Xbox does allow third party companies to produce codes and sell them. So, like um, EB Games or GameStop, for example, you can trade in credit towards a digital code if you want. Um,
Yes.
PlayStation does not allow that. So I know PlayStation's also had a lot of legal troubles in the UK with the store essentially being like the only place that people can buy them. So I think that's them putting it in stores with the digital codes is kind of their way of dealing with that particular lawsuit.
Yeah. Yeah.
But,
That
oh,
maybe. I mean,
yeah.
as you said, they've had a lot of issues over here in the UK, and there's been several kind of lawsuits over the years, and some they've won, some they've lost.
Mhm.
It's I am just very, very concerned about this. In For me, the biggest problem with this, I'm not against digital. And I'm not even necessarily calling for if you buy something digitally, you should own it forever. Because I do think that that puts an unnecessary. Like, are we saying that if a company sells something digitally, they then have to keep that server going forever just so that you can still access the thing? Like, I do think, in a way, that's an unreasonable ask. However, what I would say, and this is where the problem stems from, is in lieu of that being possible, you need to have an alternative, right? So, for example, I actually started a petition recently over here in the UK, and one of the things I suggested is we should basically have some sort of law or mandate put in place where on digital media you have to be guaranteed access for 25 years as a minimum, and when that access ends, they either have to partially refund your purchase or they have to allow you to download that game into a physical format or something like that.
Yeah, like right now social media is just like a lot of the people, like the minority essentially is being incredibly loud of saying like, oh, they're done with Sony and then they're going to Steam, which is literally just worse in terms of
Yes.
digital. um yeah, like it's one of those things where Sony does have like a lot of people that are physical collectors. And like again, like they're gonna have the code in the discs and stuff, and they feel like having the disc is somehow concrete to that game playing forever, when again it's a license printed on a disc with the data that does a
Yes.
transfer. Like there are still ways that but the thing about it is, well, too, and I was talking with a friend at work, is there's not many examples where a digital game has actually been pulled from your library. Movies are completely different because it's a third party that handles those. It's not the actual like movie companies and stuff. It's a third party company that handles that, and they pay for those licenses. And if they don't do that, then Sony ends up missing out on that kind of stuff as well. But there's not too many examples of where a digital game has actually been pulled from your library while still being playable physical. So people are very worried about games like, oh, they can just pull that stuff from you at any time. But
I mean,
name one game that's
yeah,
still
so this is
playable
what I was going to
physical.
say. I actually completely agree with you because the only high profile circumstance of where a game has been pulled out of anybody's library, really, that I can think of, wasn't even a full game release. It was a demo, and that was the PT demo on PlayStation 4 back in the day, right?
Yeah,
Of what was going to be Kojima's Silent Hill game.
yeah.
And it's like, but that is a weird one because when it's a demo, you didn't buy it, so you don't own it anyway. Like, they've
Well,
allowed you access to it.
yeah, but here's the thing though, like that PT doesn't even count because you can still play PT on a PlayStation 4 that owns that has that game on in the library. So there isn't really like, and people go like, well, like, Concord or blah, blah, blah. Like, no, those games are shut down. That's a completely different thing.
Yeah,
Like, it needs to be playable on physical media,
yeah,
but it has to have been pulled from your digital library, like pulled, not just
yeah.
like not the word just like the server won't connect, but literally pulled. There aren't really many examples that people are feeding into
I
this
agree.
worst case scenario.
And even when a game gets delisted from the store so you can't buy it anymore, as long as you already own it,
Yeah,
they don't tend to take the access away from you unless there's some sort of legal reason that they cannot allow people to
yeah.
play the game anymore.
Like
But that's very, very rare.
yeah, like there's the only example I can think of, like I, there's some of them where you can't even do that. Yeah, like what you mean is like Forza, like some of the Forza Horizon games were
Yeah.
delisted because of music and you can play them physically, but if you still own it digitally, you still have access to
You
the
can
game.
still play it. Yes.
So
Yeah.
again, like there's this worst case scenario that's coming in every people's minds where they're like, oh, they can take it, they can take Grand Theft Auto away from you. No, they won't.
Yeah, I agree. And but the thing is, this is all I do want to say as well. This is always the way with change, right? Like as
Hmm.
a human race, we generally just don't like change, and when things change, we always find some sort of way to push back on it. I remember that even at the start of the digital age, people were pushing back against digital altogether. Like they didn't even want digital to exist.
Hmm.
Now they don't have a problem with it existing, and now they're saying, oh, but physical won't exist anymore. But as we've said in the past, like we mentioned here that PlayStation's numbers, but obviously Xbox has done something similar with their first party titles for the
Hmm.
most part. And they probably, let's be honest, they probably will follow suit to some degree, I would imagine, with the next generation. Like, as we've mentioned before, they will still offer you an extra peripheral disk drive so that you can play your old physical media in a back compat format. But I would imagine that at some point, all new games on the new hardware are going to be digital only. Because at the end of the day, when you've got a piece of hardware where, for example, in the UK, the digital sales share on Xbox is well over 90%.
Hmm.
So we're talking about less than 10% of people who buy physical, and they know the numbers, they know the maths, they know the logistics. I'm pretty certain that if making those physical copies and selling them was still worth it business wise, where they were still actually making money from it, they probably would continue doing it. But the likelihood is the percentage of physical sales is now so low that it's probably too close to the level of cost that it that
Yeah,
it takes them to
because
produce and ship those things, you know?
you take a look at like the majority of games right now, like here's 100% of the games that are coming out right now are digital, but maybe
Yeah.
about 7% of the games that are coming out right now are physical.
Yeah.
So with that type of like math, it's no wonder that retailers have literally just like cleaved off massive sections of their stores from
Absolutely.
having games. Like I can go into a Walmart right now and there's maybe like 8 feet of PlayStation with the bottom section of it just controllers, and then
Yeah.
4 feet of Xbox with the bottom part of that, and then so on and so forth in almost every store that's around here. And you go
Yeah.
into an EB Games or a GameStop or whatever, and 80% of the store is Funko Pops and collectible toys and blah 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 blah. So the shelf space, even in niche shops, are basically shortening like considerably in terms of like um, availability. So, and the thing about with digital and stuff like that is if you are someone that is completely digital, like if you're someone that is completely physical, right now you limit yourself to so many games that you could be playing and enjoying. Like if you are like, I'm not going to buy a digital game ever my entire life, there are so many games that you're never ever going to be able to play, you
Yeah,
know?
that's true. That's true. I mean,
Oh yeah.
let's look, and this brings us to part of the conversation as well, right?
Yeah.
Let's look at the PC platform. PC has been basically all digital for well over a decade now.
Yeah.
Like since around 2010, maybe slightly before that, it's been an all digital platform. I do understand that the argument on PC is that at least you have the advantage of having multiple storefronts. So there is actually digital competition where there's competition for prices. There's, like we always talk about Steam sales and how heavy they can be sometimes. I was talking to my friend Fighting Cowboy yesterday on our podcast that we've started called Between Levels, and he was saying that he picked up like basically every Lego game apart from the new Lego Batman for like $15. Like he got every single Lego game, and it's like, so that stuff's crazy. And I do understand that the concern is on a closed ecosystem like a console where you only have access to one storefront. If you only have digital only and there's only one storefront, they can then do whatever they want.
Mhm.
They can sell the games at any price. They can refuse to ever put. They could do the Nintendo thing where they never put their own games on sale because they know that you can't buy them anywhere else.
Yeah,
So if you want them, you're gonna buy them.
I saw somebody like do an example of like Snake Eater was like 70 US or whatever, and then on Amazon it was like $39 or something like that. And I replied going like, yeah, you're acting like Snake Eater's never been on sale on digital before.
Precisely. Yeah.
Like I
And that's
literally
the
bought it
thing.
when it's $30.
So I do think what I would say is having an all digital platform, even on like a PlayStation or an Xbox, it won't affect the third party games that much because they will still have the competition of they're not only going to be on one storefront, you can buy them on the other platforms. And therefore, if it's cheaper on PC, you might buy it on PC. Or like I've even had it in the past before I got a PC where I had PlayStation and Xbox. And there were some games that I bought on PlayStation, even though Xbox was my preferred platform, just because PlayStation was significantly cheaper for the same game at the time that I wanted to pick it up, right? So there will still be sales competition for those third party games, but where I do think it will hurt going down this all digital front is the first party titles because that is where you can get into that Nintendo behavior of, hey, we're going to release a game that for example, I know that Star Fox isn't full price, right? I think it's like $50 or something.
Something like that.
But
Yeah.
people are saying that for the length of that game, if you're someone who's only going to play it through once or twice, for the length of that game and for the fact that it's basically a one-to-one remake of the original, they haven't added too much. A lot of people are saying it's probably not worth that money. It probably should have been like a $30 game, is a lot of
Yeah.
the conversation I've seen.
Yeah, you can get about 3 playthroughs of that game, which are about a little bit over an hour, and you're pretty much done with it. So like I bought it
Yeah,
physically because I intend to trade this in.
that's fair. That's fair.
Like I never would have bought it digitally.
Yeah, and that's kind of my thing, is when you go to a digital only situation, you then will have a situation where, for example, in 2028, let's say, and this is pie in the sky stuff, we don't know, right? But let's say that in 2028 we get a Spider Man 3 from Insomniac. If that game is digital only and it's only on the PlayStation, which it will be because they've pulled back from the PC releases now, if it's only on the PlayStation, that game could be 80, 90, $100 even by then, right? They might take the GTA route with the $100. And if they do that, they might say, "Yeah, we're going to do that." And you know what? Because it's our game and because we believe in the value of our game, even in 6 months, a year's time, although we know it's old, it's still going to be full price
Hmm.
because you can't buy it anywhere else. And I think that's the one concern that I do agree with and I understand. But other than that, like, this has been coming for years and I
Hmm.
don't really blame the companies for doing it. Like,
Well, there's
if people aren't supporting and buying physical to the degree where it makes it worth doing, why would you continue to produce these things? And it just in a business sense, why would you continue to hire people to produce these things or pay contractors and different warehouses and things to produce these things when you could save all that money because you don't really need to produce these things anymore? You know? It's crazy.
yeah. I mean, like I get that people are definitely frustrated with digital. Like for me, I prefer digital, even if I don't own it. It is what it is. Because like if I'm buying like Resident Evil Requiem or something like that, I got code for Resident Evil Requiem. I can play it on this Xbox. Becky can play it on her Xbox, and we only need one copy. And if it's an online game, we can both play at the exact same time. We need
Yeah.
live now on her console and stuff, but you can't do that physically. So for me, there are far more benefits to having digital only. If I have my Switch on me and stuff, and I've got it loaded with 35 digital games, I don't need to bring every little
Yeah.
thing out there for it. Um,
And
so
also a digital game can't get damaged whereas a physical game
yeah,
can, right?
I like people on social media. They're like, well, like digital's great, but what if you like your hard drive gets destroyed, then you like lose all your games? And we're like, no, they're tied to your account, you freaking idiot. Like,
Yeah.
like there's yeah, again, like there are pros and cons to each format. Absolutely, there always will be. But for digital or for physical, basically, it's just the ability of like having that physical thing, because even with most
Yeah.
digital games you can still play them offline.
Absolutely.
Like most of
Absolutely.
them don't require like there's really and again, like people are saying, like the owning thing and stuff like that. I'm like, with physical stuff, it does have a little bit more of ownership over it, but it's still just a
Yeah.
license on a disc.
And also actually I don't know if I even agree with that anymore because I saw a good example earlier on, right? And it was a Steam example, but it was from a former developer and who I don't have the name of right now. But they basically said, "Hey, I've got news for you. I own Cyberpunk on Steam and I can actually uninstall Steam and as long as I basically have Cyberpunk installed and move that executable to a different folder, I can still boot and play the game. And it's because Steam allows publishers to decide whether their game is DRM free or not. And if it's
Yeah.
DRM free, you can play it without even needing the digital storefront to be available anymore. So effectively, in the case of Cyberpunk, and this isn't true of every game on Steam, obviously, but in
No.
the case of Cyberpunk, when you buy it digitally, you do own it forever. Like, as long as you keep that executable installed somewhere, like, you effectively own it forever. So, it's one of those weird things where physical used to have a lot more value when the entire game was on the disc. Back then, I could understand that. When the entire game was on the disc, and you still get that with some games today, but very few and far between, those physical games are they are worth having and keeping. I agree with that because at the end of the day, when servers go offline or maybe there's a bad patch to a game, you can play a physical version of a game and just have the original unpatched version of the game, right? There was a story about Assassin's Creed Unity, I think it was back in the day, where the unpatched version of the game actually had better frame rates than the patched version of the game. So it's a weird thing about that. But it's like, in those cases, physical has a lot of value. But for the vast majority of games today, as you said, Jeff, and rightfully so, the physical case and disc and whatever is basically there just so you can have the satisfaction of, oh, I actually have this thing in my hand.
Yeah,
That's all it
it's a
is.
tangible benefit. Like people just like having something to
Yeah.
own. Like it just naturally
Yeah.
feels better.
And
Um,
and also I wanted to mention as well because I've seen a few people say, "Oh, but I love collector's editions and they won't do those anymore." Yes, they will. Like look at the PlayStation games where they have like okay, they've not got one for Wolverine, but there are licensing reasons for that our friend Keith Mitchell reported on. Basically, another company has the license to make a statue for Wolverine, so because they have the license, it makes it effectively pointless to do a collector's edition of the game. But even on the PlayStation games this generation that they've had a collector's edition of, those collector's editions are fully digital because they had to be because there's a digital PS5. So not everybody has a disc drive. So, and you still get a game case in there, like a
yeah,
steel bookcase. You still get all these things.
and a lot of those collector editions and stuff are usually manufactured, packaged, and is sitting in a warehouse 6 to 7 months before the release of the game, anyways. So it wouldn't be able to have a factory printed disc because they're pretty much in a completely different factory.
Precisely, yeah, precisely. So, I think that if you are someone who's worried that the downfall of physical means there'll never be a collector's edition again, you're sorely mistaken. There will still be collector's editions of games, and all it will be is exactly what GTA 6 is going to be on release. You will get the case for the game, or in a collector's edition form, you'll probably get a steelbook case, and inside of that will be a code for the game instead of the disc.
Hmm.
That's all it will be. That will be the only difference. But in reality, when the disk is just a boot key for you to be able to install the game anyway, what difference does it make?
Can you imagine
Like,
if can you imagine if they sent them out to retail and they have the case, you open it up and it's a disc and it says this disc does not contain data and it just has the code printed on the top of it. There's your
that would
disc.
be hilarious.
There's your disc.
That would actually be hilarious. Oh god. Yeah, and don't get me wrong, maybe I'm a little bit biased because I don't know about you, Jeff, but I was quite an early supporter of digital.
Mm.
as you mentioned earlier, I just really like the convenience. I don't want to carry around, like, even on Nintendo, I don't want to carry around 10 different game cartridges with me. Admittedly, when I got the Switch 2, I did get a few physical games, but the only reason I got those is because they were older games that I had already played, and I just wanted to try the Switch version, and it was significantly cheaper to buy the physical version of those games than it was the digital version, right? But every new game on the Nintendo Switch 2 that I pick up, I buy digitally because I don't want to have to swap cartridges, carry all these things around. Like, no, I like the freedom and the ability to, like, even when I go to a friend's house, for example, right? Let's say I go and stay at a friend's house for the weekend. I can log into their Xbox with my account and I can have all my saves, I can have all my games. That allows me to maybe let them try a game that they don't own themselves. Same thing with PlayStation, same thing with Steam. You can log into Steam on any device that supports Steam and you have your entire library available there to you. I don't really I don't understand why people are still holding on to physical so tightly because, as you said, Jeff,
It's
in the
just the
current,
collective nature. That's all it
yeah,
is. It's a feeling of collecting.
yeah, and I think there's got to be some nostalgia to it as well.
Mhm.
Obviously, like there is a nostalgic part of it, but I think maybe people don't understand that they could stop you booting a physical disc at any time.
Yeah.
They could just say, "Hey, sorry, the license on this disc is no longer accessible," or something.
Yeah, like
Like,
there's very very few option or very few examples of a game just being completely unplayable on all sides, other than games have just been shut down because of servers.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
a completely different thing.
And that's going to happen regardless of whether they're digital or
Yeah.
physical, right?
Yeah. Like I keep
Like,
telling them, like, how's your Concord? How's Concord working for you?
there are people out there who still have those Concord disc copies, and they're
Yeah.
never going to be able to use them.
No.
It's just, it's absolutely crazy. I'm interested to see where Xbox goes with it. I think, as we were discussing before, they have a very interesting opportunity. Jeff is not just randomly moving his hand, you can't see behind it. There you go.
Him and Nix or Spanx.
It's Nick's over there. But I'm interested to see because, as we said before the show, Xbox have two very interesting opportunities here. One is they could say, we know they're reevaluating their next gen hardware, right? They've
Yeah.
publicly said that because they're reevaluating everything right now, the next gen hardware has also come under that reevaluation, so it may not be what they were originally planning it to be. And therefore they could very easily win a chunk of people over by saying, "Hey, yeah, we're still going to support physical games and we're going to have a disc drive in our console." You know?
I think honestly, the most realistic thing is that they just go, "Hey, we're going to have a disk drive that you can purchase for your physical games, and it'll be
Yeah.
available at launch."
I agree. I agree. And then the other part of it is, and this could also be true depending on if Helix does end up being what they originally envisioned it being. If this thing has digital, if this thing has multiple digital storefronts anyway, they kind of alleviate a lot of people's concerns over being locked into one storefront and what that would mean for purchasing options and things.
Mhm.
So actually, they might win on both sides of this argument if they're clever enough to do the right things here. Is I do think I saw a tweet earlier, and it was basically someone saying that right now Xbox have the amazing opportunity to actually do to PlayStation what PlayStation did to them back with the Xbox One PS4 reveal
Yeah.
slash launch. Like, and that could be amazing.
And
you
it's
know,
like Asha and like Matt Booty going like, "Hey, do you want to borrow a game?" Absolutely.
yeah, so we'll see. We'll keep an eye on this. I don't think this is the last we've heard of it. Obviously, it is important to remember that in the short term, physical games on PlayStation are not going anywhere. They've said that this won't start till January 2028. So everything releasing this year and next year will still be available physically for what that's worth to you. But there will be a significant change coming in around a year and a half's time, and we'll keep an eye on it if there's any updates from PlayStation or Xbox or even Nintendo, but I assume Nintendo's just going to carry on doing their own thing. Then we will definitely keep you updated. But what else do we have on the news today, Jeff?
Staying with PlayStation, we have former PlayStation executive Sean Layden has said he doesn't understand Sony's decision to pull back from PC because he doesn't believe late ports were costing its console business sales. Layden was chairman of Sony Interactive Entertainment up until around 2019, shortly after which PlayStation bought its first major release to PC, which was Horizon Zero Dawn. Ever since then, PlayStation has ported many of its major releases to PC around a year or more after the debut of their debut on PS5. However, following diminishing returns and diminishing sales and existential threats from portable PCs, it is reportedly stopping PC ports entirely. Speaking to the PS1 podcast, Layden defended his initial decision to bring PlayStation games to PC and suggested that he didn't understand why Sony was seemingly walking back on the platform. Says he doesn't believe late ports cost its sales. First of all, the games don't go to PC for like a year or whatever it is. It's not day and date. And if they think that a gaming console or a game coming out 18 months after its launch window on another platform somehow stopped a sale from happening 18 months ago in the hardware business, I would like to see how they can prove that thesis. You can feel that is true, but I don't happen to feel that's true. If someone waiting 18 months for something to come on PC, we didn't lose a sale to them. They weren't going to buy the hardware anyway. The former PlayStation exec says he doesn't understand why Sony would have made the decision, but theorized that the cost of distraction of making PC versions has potentially become too great. Defending his decision to start bringing PlayStation games to PC nearly a decade ago, Layden argued that the core value for SIE was never the additional sales. There's been a lot of misunderstanding about my decision to put games on PC. I think exclusivity is very important to a platform business. That's how you differentiate. If you want Zelda, you go to Nintendo. If you need Mario, that's where you go. That's where you'll find it. And at the PlayStation business, we did exclusively through PS1, PS2, and PS3. That was just standard of the day. We had Japanese companies who would be exclusive to the PlayStation platform through our relationships with them. And so that became the standard way you sold the platform. Moving to PC or multi platform releases is really about two things. The PC in my mind at the time was not to make money. Frankly, it's how do I get my intellectual property in front of people who wouldn't normally see it? How do I get the world of Horizon to be seen by people who aren't in the PlayStation world? Not necessarily because I think they're going to buy a PlayStation. I wasn't that crazy. I don't think that was going to happen. But as we take our intellectual property across other media, whether it's into films or in television or comic books or in merchandise, you need to have as many eyeballs that are aware of this character or this story. So this is essentially a smart one, where he's actually saying that this was never going to translate to them buying hardware, because I don't think it ever was. I think the um, the Venn diagram essentially, of where that little cross section would be was so minute. um, but it is interesting to see like former leadership going like, what are you guys doing? Like, this, having your stuff on
Absolutely.
PC was like, you know
Yeah.
the best thing that
I
you could
mean,
possibly do.
and let's be honest, like, Sean Layden, since he left PlayStation, has said some things about the industry that I don't agree with,
Yeah.
but I do think that in this case he's in a unique position where he understands what the PlayStation customer is looking for, right? And he understands that what that brand's value is to people. I would imagine that he has quite a good sense of whether PC releases would significantly harm the platform or not. And everything he's saying is basically no, they should have just carried on doing them because it was probably having minimal effect anyway.
Yeah, like, are they expecting like another like 1 to 3 million sales 18 months after the games come out? No, that's when
Mm,
your sales slow down the most.
absolutely. Absolutely. Like, it's, and I've said this with our friend Keith Mitchell before, it's one of those things where it's like if they were releasing these games day and date or even just a few months after the console version and they were releasing them on PC and then they were selling really badly or quite poorly like they have done, I would I would understand their decision more in that circumstance. But you have to be aware that if you don't release a game on PC until years after it's originally come out, there has to be some sort of awareness that, like, most people, as much as PC gamers like to say, oh, it's okay, I'm not going to get your console, I'll wait, most gamers in general, those on PC or any other platform, if they want to play a game, they're not going to wait, or they are going to wait, but they're going to end up waiting so long that they don't care anymore and they move on to other things.
Hmm.
And that's the problem. Like, it's not like back in the day where there were maybe 4 to 6 major releases in a year and that was kind of all we got. We have literally hundreds of major releases every year now. Look at just September and October alone. Like, there's no, we've been joking about it, but there's no way that we're going to be able to cover all of those games, even between our entire team. Like, it's physically impossible because there's 50 odd games in September alone, and that's without a few that haven't even announced their dates yet, but will probably get dates that are in and
Well,
around
Onimusha
September.
is coming out 3 weeks earlier now to kind of avoid, how stuffed,
Yeah.
that whole month is.
Yeah, so it's absolutely crazy. And it's like, so you have to accept that when you're releasing a game on another platform that late, what I would say is, unless it's a multiplayer game like a Helldivers 2 or something, where they released that on Xbox later and it did well, right? Because the difference with a multiplayer game is they still have people playing them years later. So you can release it on a new platform years later and it just injects additional life into the game. But for single player focused games, people move on. People will not wait that long. I've said, and this is why I've said before, like, even when we were having the whole conversation about, like, Xbox exclusives and things, I'm still firmly a believer that even if Xbox had no true exclusives and they just came out and said, hey, every single one of these games is like a 2 year or 3 year timed exclusive, it would do its job. Because no one who really wants to play a game is gonna wait 2 or 3 years to play it. And if they are stubborn enough to try and wait that long to play it, they're not going to end up playing it anyway because they're going to move on to other things, which arguably means they never wanted to play it that much in the first place.
Then they played it and I'm like, man, this is dated. This looks like what games were like 3 years ago.
Yeah, so I mean, I think that PlayStation in terms of PC and their PC approach really shot themselves in the foot because I don't think they ever really gave it an opportunity to be successful in the sense of when you're releasing games that late, there's always going to be minimal sales. but then they had the missteps of like trying to make everybody need to have PSN to play their games, you know. Then I also think some of it, to be fair, and I understand it from a PlayStation perspective, because clearly they do make very, very good games, right? But I think there's a little bit of arrogance where I think they thought that their games were more valuable to the audience than they were.
Yeah.
I think they thought they were going to release these things on PC and, oh, hey, these people have waited years to play our amazing single player games, and then they sort of sell millions, but it doesn't work like that, especially on PC, because let's be honest, I can look on Steam right now and I can go to new releases, and there's probably like 100 new releases just today. You know, like it's there are on the PC platform, there are so many new releases every day, and also there is more of a, like, people are more open to lower budget, just fun indie games, right? It's only really the more casual console space where people must have AAA shiny things, and it just, like, there's always, I don't know, it's that thing of there's always something new to play. So why are you, unless you really, really, really wanted to play a game, why are you going to wait 3 years to play it? You know, like, I'm sure that some of those people who bought those PlayStation games on PC did really want to play those games, and
Mhm.
they probably did buy them as soon as they released. But the percentage is obviously small because there are literally hundreds of millions of people who game on
Well,
PC.
and also you get people that are playing on PC and they're taking that experience to Twitch or YouTube, whatever, and they're almost
Yeah,
acting like a secondary ad campaign for those games on PlayStation, going, "Oh, hey, this is on PlayStation." Like, "Oh, I never got around to playing that. Like, this looks amazing," and then
yeah,
they end up buying it.
absolutely. So I think that, I would have liked to have seen PlayStation actually, before they fully pulled the plug, I would have liked to have seen them at least be like, okay, let's give this a chance. Like, for example, earlier this year, they released a game, Saros, which I quite liked. I reviewed it pretty well, and
Mhm.
it was fun. But if I don't understand why they didn't go, hey, this is a somewhat smaller game from us. It's still like from a respectable studio,
Yeah.
but it's not one of our tentpole franchises. Why not just try and release that day and date on PC and see what happens? You know? Because they released they released Helldivers 2 day and date
Yeah.
on PC, and it
Well,
sold millions of copies.
yeah, exactly. And you look at Saros and like I don't think it's even broken 400, 500,000 yet.
Precisely. Precisely. So, and I do think that if that game was on PC, it probably would have sold 1 million copies on PC at least, you know? Because
Yeah.
the audience on PC, as I was mentioning just now, the overall gaming audience on PC is substantially bigger than even the PlayStation console audience, right? Like, we're talking about hundreds of millions of gamers on PC. Like, just on Steam alone, I think there's something like 150 million accounts, and not every PC gamer uses Steam. Like, let's remember that, you know?
Mhm.
So it's that thing of there are hundreds of millions of gamers on PC.
Yeah,
So
but
you
how many of them have the hardware to really run those games?
And that's the other thing. That is the other thing, which obviously does make a difference for sure.
Especially when
But
you have
I,
that Cinder City or whatever that's coming out, that's a 64 gig
yeah,
recommended for RAM. Like,
yeah, yeah, definitely. Like, I was speaking about it the other day. I'm very privileged that obviously I decided to invest the money in a very high end PC, but that is mostly because of what we do as well. Like, if we didn't do what we do, I would have got a more modest PC that maybe couldn't run some of those higher end games, you know? So I definitely can relate to that. I just wish, like, honestly, if it was me running PlayStation, I would have at least run that experiment a few times. Like, you've tried the delayed releases, why don't you just try a couple of them day and date and see what happens? You know, and I'm not saying Wolverine, like, no one ever expected you to do Wolverine day and date, because that is a massive tentpole game for you and it's going to help sell your system. I understand that. But as I said, something smaller like a Saros, or, you know, any of these other kind of slightly smaller projects they've had, why not just release them on PC? Like, it's so weird. It's so weird. But it is what it is. We'll see. You know, we'll see if it's the right decision in the end. Like, I wouldn't be shocked if in 3, 4, 5 years time we're sat here and they're actually releasing on PC again. You know,
Hmm.
like, that really wouldn't surprise me at all, because I do think the industry's changing, and I think, as we mentioned before, especially if the next Xbox effectively becomes a PC anyway, and then you've got like the Steam machine now, and you've got, you know, Steam Deck and other various handhelds, like, I think the audience would almost become too big for them to ignore, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
And in the rising price of hardware, you know, this is something Keith Mitchell on the Outer Haven was talking about the other day on their podcast, Spectator Mode, where he said, like, in the rising price of hardware right now, if the PlayStation 6 is going to cost you, you know, $1,200, let's say, just as a random figure,
Hmm.
probably like $1,000 plus. If it's going to cost you $1,200, why would you not spend an extra $100, $200 and get a much more capable PC? You know, unless you're specifically buying that hardware for the exclusives, which, as we know from the attach rate, is actually a relatively small percentage of their
Yeah.
overall player base.
Here's my talk back to that though. All right, so let's say you're spending 1,200 getting a PlayStation 6. All
Yeah,
right. And then you're like, okay, well, if I spend 1,500, I can get a PC that runs this at this. And
yeah.
then in 2 years, you have to upgrade this, and that is $800. And you have to upgrade this, and that's $600. And so then in 4 or 5 years, you've basically spent maybe about $3,200 on that PC. Whereas on a PlayStation 6, you're just spending that $1,200 for the entire duration of this life cycle.
That is true, and that is a fair point. I mean, it's definitely, and it's something I've mentioned to people before. Like, obviously, there is, depending on how much you can put into the more that you can put into your initial PC investment,
Yeah.
the longer that PC lasts you, the more valuable it makes it, right? Like,
Hmm.
my PC overall cost around £3,000, which is like $4,000 roughly, right?
Hmm.
But that PC, without touch wood that nothing breaks on it, I won't need to upgrade that for 10 years. Do you know what I mean? So it's kind of like I will still be able to play the vast majority of games, because
Yeah.
it's a very, very high end PC right now. So even as tech improves,
Yeah. But
I'm still going to be able to play most
you're
things.
also still spending the equivalent of like 2 generations of consoles. So,
Precisely, precisely.
you know,
And then and there's pluses and minuses to everything, right? Like,
yeah,
I know that some people will make the argument that yes, that is the case, but then you could argue that on PC, because you can save a lot of money on video games, you kind of earn back some of that initial investment. Whereas on a console, you might save some money, but you're usually not saving as much money on games as you
mm,
would, over on PC. So there's a lot more to the equation than obviously one time kind of sunken cost. But I just think that the industry is in a really interesting place right now with these going all digital, rising costs of hardware, people seeming to be more attracted by the PC platform. Like, I don't know if PlayStation pulling away from PC releases in a time when the PC platform is growing and the console platforms seem to be becoming less attractive. I don't know if that's the right decision, but time will obviously tell on that one. So, what other news do we have today, Jeff?
Alrighty. So we had a U.S. bill designed to stop paid games being terminated and being made unplayable in the future has failed to pass a Senate vote. The Protect Our Games Act, which was proposed by California Assemblyman Chris Ward, was put to a vote at the California State Assembly last month, where it won with a vote of 43 to 16. The next step was to pass the bill to the state Senate, which was where it was debated and voted on again. Had this vote passed, a final version of the bill would then have been created with the House and Senate members before being submitted for final approval. However, as noted on the Reddit page of Stop Killing Games, a consumer movement seeking to preserve video games after they're taken online to prevent them from being made unplayable, as was the case with The Crew, the bill lost the vote at the state Senate after 4 Democrats voted yes, 3 Republicans voted no, and the rest abstained. Those absences matter. A campaign volunteer wrote on Reddit, in a committee vote, an abstention, what is it? Abstention? I have no idea how to say that word. Um, Abstention is not neutral. It has the same practical effect as a no because a bill only advances if it gets the majority of yes votes. Not enough yeses means the bill stops here for that reason. That is the loss. The volunteer also claimed that the campaign has attempted to pass the bill without funding or lobbying, stating, "This was our first attempt in our first year in the United States with a U.S. budget of $0. No paid staff in California, no war chest, no in-person lobbying operation. This timeline was so compressed that we could not get funding in place fast enough to put people in the building." So effectively, what they're saying is they're going to come back essentially, to do this again, but with money behind them.
Yeah,
Um, and I think in a vote, like there should have to be a yes or no. There
yeah,
shouldn't
for
be
sure.
like where they're, de- de- declining to take a stance on it.
Yeah,
Especially if that effectively means no, then just say no. Like, um, like again, this is like the first major attempt at kind of doing something like this. So I think that
yeah,
again, when they come back with more money and more of a pull behind it, I think it's definitely going to gain a little bit more traction. um, but yeah, it's just kind of updating that news. We've kind of covered it before. So
yeah, for
um,
sure.
yeah, it unfortunately they did not win this round, but it is what it is.
We'll keep an eye on these things and see what happens. I mean, in with everything going on around kind of all these sorts of issues right now, I don't think this is the last that we're going to hear of this and other similar situations, right?
No. However, other news that we've covered before, and likely the last we'll ever hear of this, is that Krafton has settled its lawsuit with the former leadership team of Subnautica 2 developer Unknown Worlds and has agreed to pay the $250 million disputed bonus. The complaint concerned a $250 million bonus paid tie-out to revenue targets for the 2025 early access release of Subnautica 2, which the former shareholders of Unknown Worlds Entertainment, represented by the Fortis Advisors LLC, alleged no owners Crafton Inc., sought to avoid paying by delaying the game through pressure tactics. In its defense, Crafton accused the 3 former leads of threatening to self-publish Subnautica 2, releasing it without Crafton's backlog or backing, marketing, promotion, or distribution. This, Crafton claims, left with it no choice but to terminate their employment, along with the allegations that Max McGuire, Ted Gill, and Charlie Cleveland downloaded tens of thousands of company files and emails in the lead up to these terminations. The founders denied this and claimed the publisher changed its story mid litigation about why it fired the founders and seized control over Unknown Worlds. A new report by Bloomberg now claims Krafton has agreed to pay the bonuses to the entire staff of subsidiary Unknown Worlds Entertainment following a statement with the studio CEO and co founders. As part of the settlement, Ted Gill has stepped down from his role, which was initially stripped from him until a court ordered Krafton to reinstate him earlier this year, insisting we mutually agree to part ways, and new leadership is the best way for the studio to move forward. We're all super excited about Subnautica 2 and its tremendous success, Gill said. Yeah, so this kind of worked out for Unknown Worlds. They've got to ship the game, early access. I've seen a lot of people playing it and enjoying it and having a lot of fun with it. But they also got their money that they've wanted, which is again the most important thing, because this was, you know, a publisher that is on record essentially of using ChatGPT to ask them how
Yes,
they could not pay this bonus. Um, so yeah, like this is really good that the little guy actually did win in this instance.
absolutely.
Um, yeah, and Crafton essentially just got the worst PR they could possibly imagine. Like,
Yeah,
how would
yeah.
how would any company or developer want to partner with Crafton after this?
I have no idea. I really have no idea. It's like, yeah, you know, I remember when we first heard about this entire thing, and it's just like, I couldn't even believe it. Like you like the Chat GPT thing was just like, really? Are you really trying to ask Chat GPT how to get out of this thing that you've agreed to? Like, come on
Yeah,
now, you know? It's
yeah,
crazy.
it is ridiculous. Alrighty. Our second last piece of the day so far is that a lead developer of Baldur's Gate 2 has said that he turned down an offer to work on a fourth entry, saying it just wouldn't have worked. 2023's Baldur's Gate was a massive success, selling well over 20 million copies and boasting some of the highest critical acclaims of any game from the current generation. Hasbro wanted a follow up and began talking to partners about a potential sequel. Now, Baldur's Gate 2 co designer James Olen has revealed to PC Gamer that he was approached by Hasbro to make Baldur's Gate 4, but said he declined. Olen said that he was working alongside his Baldur's Gate 2's co-lead Kevin Martins and at Archetype Entertainment on Exodus, which is one of the games Hasbro has spent about $1 billion on. While the
Yeah.
prospect of returning to the series may have been tantalizing, Hasbro CEO Chris Cox reportedly said that asked Olen what he thought about making Baldur's Gate 4, to which Olen replied, I don't. I would fail, and here's why I would fail. Olin continued, I wouldn't want to compete against that. Doing Exodus is hard enough, but having to compete against Baldur's Gate 3, that would be insanity. Baldur's Gate 3 was developed using Larian's own Divinity 4.0 engine. When considered the effort it would take to build an appropriate engine and tools, Olin said, we're talking about at least half a decade of horror building all that stuff.
Yeah.
Olen is no longer in the games industry, but Martins remains at Archetype Entertainment working on Exodus, which is set to release next year. So yeah, like, you know, if someone says like, hey, so the Mona Lisa, it's amazing. We need a follow-up to the Mona Lisa. You know, like
Yeah.
how how do you do that? Right? Like, how would
Yeah.
you even look to compete with Baldur's Gate 3? I mean, we see tons of Baldur's Gate 3 style like CRPGs and all that kind of stuff coming out, and none of them basically are even in the same ballpark when it comes to tech.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
like,
It's absolutely. I mean, I wouldn't have taken on that job, you know, like
yeah,
I
no,
don't think many I don't think many developers would have wanted to even try that, you know?
no, like honestly, they like I don't know, I can't remember the falling out between them and Larion, but if they would say like, hey, after you guys make your Divinity, do you want to make Baldur's Gate 4? You know, but yeah, like I don't see any publisher or any studio being like, yeah, we're confident we can pull it off.
Yeah, yeah, I completely agree. Like, yeah, it's crazy, absolutely crazy.
Alrighty. Um, our final story of the day right now is Blade and Dishonored developer Arcane is reportedly another Xbox studio facing closure as part of expected huge cuts at Microsoft. Earlier this month, media reports indicated that the Xbox division was planning significant job losses across its business as part of a major reset being planned by CEO Asha Sharma. The first developers at risk of being shut down were named by Bloomberg as Compulsion Games, Double Fine, and Ninja Theory, with Undead Labs later reported to be a target for closure. I'm going to pause the story for a second here. It just seems
Yes,
like they're just like naming every Xbox studio,
yeah. I
right?
wanted to, so that's what I wanted to say. I saw yesterday. You may have heard of Christopher Dring, right? Good
Yeah.
journalist, and has been around a long time. But he reported something the other day that maybe Obsidian was basically in trouble, and then it turned out like no, that's definitely not true. And I think that that's the problem right now is because people know that there are going to be cuts and possible
They're
studio
just reaching out
closures.
to everything.
Yeah. Yeah. And so it's like I have no doubt that some of these studios named are definitely in danger. I wouldn't be surprised if Undead Labs is in danger because they've taken a long time to get State of Decay 3 out of the door. Like a very long time. I
Hmm.
wouldn't be surprised I wouldn't be surprised to see Double Fine given back their independence. I don't think they'll be closed because I think that just from a PR perspective is a really bad look. Like, but Double Fine could quite easily do a Toys for Bob type thing, where, hey, they took over Activision Blizzard. Toys for Bob wanted out because they wanted to be able to go and work on their own thing again,
Hmm.
and Microsoft was like, hey, yeah, fair enough, you can go and gain your own independence, but we'd still love to work with you. Will you work on this Spyro game, basically? you know?
Yeah.
And so it's like, I could see something like that happening with Double Fine. Obviously, we've heard the reports that Ninja Theory, perhaps the Senua reveal was kind of to drum up interest in potentially selling them. And it's like, I get that, and maybe that's part of the reason that that game wasn't announced as an exclusive, right? Because if they're looking to sell them before that game comes out, then who knows? But it's one of those things where it's like just because a just because a studio is even, and I've mentioned this before on the podcast, just because they're in discussions about what the future might hold for them doesn't mean they're at risk of being closed down. Just because they're going to have layoffs doesn't mean they're going to be closed down. I wouldn't be surprised if Arcane has a few layoffs, for example, but I highly doubt, I would genuinely be shocked if they cancel this Blade game. And the reason I say that is because Blade, yes, I understand it was originally kind of meant to capitalize on the movie that was supposed to happen that clearly is not going to happen now.
Well, apparently the game's over budget as well too.
Yeah, so I do understand those things. However, there are things to consider about this. Blade is not a Microsoft IP. It's an IP owned by Disney, Marvel IP, right?
Hmm.
And they would have signed a contract. So if they cancel this game, it won't save them money because I guarantee you they would have to pay hundreds of millions to Disney for the failure to deliver this game. Like, there's always things like that in place. If you fail to meet the terms of a contract, there is basically a termination fee. If you want to terminate a contract of, hey, we're not doing this anymore, there's a termination fee. And I would imagine that in the case of Blade, that termination fee is probably well over 100 million, because if that game came out and did successfully in terms of sales and things, Disney stood to make a lot of money, you know, from that game. So it's, I think that, as we said just now, a lot of these journalists and reports, I respect them and they've done great work in the past, but I do think there's a lot of scaremongering right now, and I think there's a lot of, and I don't blame the journalists fully for it because clearly they have their sources, right? But just like any situation, let me ask you a question, Jeff.
Hmm.
If you, at your job, if somebody said to you, "Oh, I've heard there's going to be layoffs happening soon," you guys would start to think the worst, right? You guys would start to think, "Oh, maybe I'm going to lose my job," or "Who's going to lose their job?" Like, and you start to speculate. And I think that that's what's happening right now is a lot of these sources that these journalists have are basically people who work at these studios or work within Microsoft, and they are just speculating based on the limited information that they might have access to, where they go, "Oh yeah, I've heard that this studio might be in danger." It's like, but anyone could say that about any studio, you know? Like, so I think there's a lot of scaremongering right now. I'm not saying that none of these studios are in danger, because I think at least one studio will be closed down, and I think at least one studio will be either sold off or given independence. But I don't believe for a second that I don't believe there's going to be some massive purge where they close down 6 studios, which was something I saw reported yesterday, you know?
No.
Like, that isn't going to happen. So, yeah. How do you feel about all of this?
Well, I mean, like again, like until we actually get like concrete, information about this, it's just like fear speculation, and then that just drives you emotionally within this entire space. Um, yeah, like I don't think that they would get rid of Arcane.
Agree.
Like they are a studio that has had a pedigree of some like extremely high profile games that are game of the year contenders, games that have had fairly decent sales, like not blockbusters or anything like that.
Yeah,
Um,
for sure.
but yeah, like I again, like until we get more information, like you can just speculate, and that's all that is. Like there's no like facts to kind of like cement those opinions into anything that is kind of worthwhile. But um, again, like I'm just kind of waiting for more information. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you. Like, until we have some concrete official information, we can't really, speculation only hurts in these situations, right? And that's kind of the problem. Like, people are speculating, and I just urge people, remember that there are people with actual jobs working at these studios right now, and your speculation may be causing them some serious harm from a kind of mental health perspective, and all these other things. They're probably worried enough as it is, so please stop your baseless speculation. Unless you have actual concrete information that you can back up with evidence, then I think that you shouldn't really be in the business of speculating right now. You should just be in the business of, hey, let's wait for official information and see what actually happens. Because I always think to myself, in these situations, we have a tendency, again, as human beings, to always assume and expect the worst, right? And often, the reality isn't quite as bad as you think it's going to be. I'm not saying that's the case here. Maybe this is going to be really bad. But we don't know until they come out and say things. And I'm sure that within the next week or two, now that their financial year is basically ending, I'm sure that we are going to start to hear more information on these things, and we will, of course, keep you updated with all of it. But I think, is that all we have for today, Jeff?
Yeah, I'm browsing some stuff, but I'm just seeing like Steam Machine has like a red ring of death thing going on right
They do,
now.
yeah. Some people's
Um,
GPUs are dying in the Steam machine, so be wary of
yeah,
that.
we've got a leaked Metroid Ravenous
Nice.
apparently was on a Brazilian ratings board, and that's been removed. Um, just other little things. There's a new Switch
Yeah,
2 model apparently coming out. It's not an OLED. It's just got a slightly improved LCD screen. Um, but yeah, nothing really. That's pretty much about it. And the majority of games that we're all playing right now are under embargo, so we can't really discuss any of
yeah.
those, despite how much I really want to talk about it.
Absolutely. Like, we will be talking about one specific game relatively soon, so make sure you're subscribed to the channel because we'll probably have a dedicated episode specifically for that game when we can talk about it. Which we don't often do, but when we really want to talk about something here, we do have dedicated review episodes. Obviously, we had Scott and Jeff talking about Trails before, which is one of our most viewed episodes on the channel, and we've done
People
other
love
ones as
trails.
well.
People love trails.
So yeah, keep an eye out for all of that. Unfortunately, we can't speak about much else right now. What was our last review release, Jeff, over on Analog Stick Gaming?
Our last review, well, I'm going to be putting up a preview for Sand Raiders of Selfie. We have a new guy on our team that has been playing about 20 to 25 hours of that game. Yeah, definitely check that game out. It's on early access
I've
right
seen
now.
Peanut playing a bit of it,
Peanut.
and it.
Oh, he had the Pirates of the Caribbean music playing while they were
Yeah,
going, and now they have this
I
new
will
meta
say
of
it
taking
looks quite
multiple
fun.
ships.
It does look quite fun, and it
It's
was one that,
basically Sea of Thieves. It is
yeah,
basically Sea of Thieves.
yeah, it's
Um,
one that I would have played. But of course, if you were around last week, you'll know that I am currently playing one thing that I can talk about, Adventures of Elliot. I'm playing that for review, and that will be coming in the next sort of 5 to 6 days. I have almost finished the game now, so that will be coming early next week to mid next week. And then the other thing that I'm playing, I can't talk about yet. But yeah, the game that you just mentioned does look brilliant. I suggest that people go and check it out. But obviously, we will have a preview very soon with more information from our new colleague over there, which is, all good.
yeah,
And
and
yeah,
our
what else will
our
we have?
so our newest review is Dead or Alive 6 Last Round, which we talked about
Of
last week.
course, it is. Yeah,
Yeah, and it's a lot of people are upset because like again, like not all the some DLC you have to rebuy again that just won't transfer over.
yeah,
There's also the Kuna Diamond and my Shiriani debacle as well too because of licensings and rights and stuff like that.
yeah.
But yeah, other than that, yeah, I'm going to be working on a review coming up here for what game was it? Biomechanical Toy, which is kind of like a Metal Slug kind of style side
Interesting.
scroller.
Okay,
Um,
interesting.
I have it for Switch, so I'll be playing that. Score is probably not looking too hot on that one, but I've been playing a
Sure.
little bit of that. And other than that, I've beat Star Fox now. I've done 2 runs of it. I will say the difficulty for the one run when you take on start what is it Wolf again, the
Hmm.
difficulty in that particular fight ramps up like crazy. Like
Wow.
he just
Okay.
gets behind you and just destroys you, and like you can continue and keep playing and all that kind of stuff, but like I just restarted a whole new campaign on easy just to get through that fight because you can't change the difficulty mid run. And like up until then the game was like on normal pretty decent, like it was still fairly easy, but that fight was unforgiving.
Yeah. Yeah. And of course, make sure you're following us here at the Gaming Mix podcast on Analog Stick Gaming YouTube channel, but also over at analogstickgaming.com, because we will have many, many reviews coming up in the coming months. You know, from all of our team. I'm sure that our colleague James will do a couple of the sports titles for us. I'll be chipping in with a few things as well. We like I don't know if we're gonna I don't know if we're gonna manage to review the like 200 games coming out in September and October, but we'll certainly try and do as many of them as possible. So, you know, look out for all of that. And for now, we will see you next time. Thank you for tuning in. Bye.
See ya.